Meeting called to order. Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember Clayton is absent. Councilmember Kendall.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Here.
Mayor Moore.
Here.
We will now please stand for a silent prayer, a moment of reflection. We will now salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the following manner. The annual notice was forwarded to the Asbury Park Press, the Coaster, and the Star Ledger on January 7, 2021, and posted on the bulletin board the same date. All notices are on file with the city clerk. We will now have the introduction of our new social worker, Breasia Wright, by Deputy Mayor Quinn.
So I think, as many of you know, about a year ago, we formed an equity committee, and that equity committee made a dozen or so recommendations. And the cities kind of worked their way through those recommendations. Some of them were easy lifts, some of them were not quite so easy. One of the recommendations that was made was to hire a company called Preferred Behavioral. They came in, are helping the city deal with a substance abuse population in Asbury Park. I'm sure many of you know the opioid epidemic. Asbury Park has not been spared, and as of this year, it's the highest it's ever been, with over 100,000 overdoses. The second thing we've done is our police department has been attending crisis intervention trainings and doing a great job with that. And the third thing, which is the most exciting thing, is we've hired a social worker to work and be a liaison with our police department and our social services department to identify and work with nonviolent incidences. So I'm very excited to announce Breasia Wright, who is an Asbury Park resident, graduated from the Asbury Park High School, to our team here in Asbury Park. So can we all just give her a... And Donna, maybe let her use your microphone just to say a couple of quick words.
Yeah.
Just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you here. And if Nate's listening, Nate, can we have a microphone?
There you go. Well-oiled machine we got here.
Hi, I'm a little nervous, but my name is Breasia Wright. I am a resident of Asbury Park. I graduated Asbury Park High School in 2009. I got my BSW from Livingstone College in North Carolina. I've been in social services for a little while now. I worked at a psychiatric hospital dealing with crisis issues. I worked in, sorry, I'm nervous. I worked in a lot of like social services atmospheres. This position, it brought me to this position because like I said, I am a resident from here. I look forward to being that link in the middle to help residents and local people, get the help that they need. And I look forward to serving this position.
Ready? One. Okay.
Welcome to our team.
You want me to say something? You want some of your family to take a picture with you?
Yeah, come on.
Come on, family. Come on.
Yeah. I'm doing okay, and I don't want to just have a mascot.
You want to use your phone? Why? You got it?
Hey, Ron.
Hey. You're going to come on? Here. Stick this up. You want your flowers? Give her her flowers. Give her her flowers.
Okay, everyone here? Couple more? Mayor, can't see you. They're right there, yeah. Good. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone. Nice meeting you.
We're now on to the special event applications.
The two applications before you this evening, the first one is an extension of an application that was already submitted for the Krampus event. This extension is just asking for a display of Krampus masks to be put on Madison Avenue in a few parking spaces. The second application is from Big Brothers Big Sisters for the holiday drive-through event. They're asking for 10 dedicated or reserved parking spaces for 2 hours on December 9th. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
No, thank you.
We are now on to items to be presented. The first only presentation is Asbury Partners LLC and Tandem Cycle for an extension of an interim approval for a fitness center at 216 Cookman Avenue, Block 3802, Lot 1, also known as the Summer Experience.
You can take your mask off.
Great, thank you. Good evening, council members. Jennifer Porter from CSG Law. I'm here on behalf of Asbury Partners in connection with its request on behalf of Tandem for an extension of the Summer Experience project, specifically with respect to the Tandem use, which is actually the only current surviving use of the original Summer Experience project. Just to give you a very quick background in terms of the nature of this proposal, Summer Experience started as an interim project to allow for an information booth and various other seasonal amenities and uses to take advantage of the downtown Asbury Park area and the waterfront redevelopment area. That began in 2013 and was extended by this council and by the planning board in 2014, again in 2016 and 2019, and it has hosted a number of terrific interim uses. Most recently in 2019, Tandem, which is an indoor cycling studio, was approved to take place in the former information center and to utilize the Longhouse. Unfortunately, they have not had the benefit of having the full 3 years to allow that use to grow to its full potential prior to transitioning to a permanent location within the city. They have had great success. They originally started doing weekend events at Asbury Lanes, then they moved into their current location their current location on Cookman Avenue. And why we are here this evening is they are not proposing any changes to the use. There are no changes to the site plan or anything that's existing on the site. They're simply asking that they have the benefit of an additional extension of time to allow this use to operate as part of that project to allow them to continue to flourish with the intention that they will be and are actively pursuing a permanent location within the city. We do have with us this evening Mary Claire Panati on behalf of Tandem Cycle, who can certainly answer any questions that the council may have regarding the use or anything specific with respect to the site.
It's a good program, I think, but I've got to be 100% honest. We got a lot of complaints about noise. So if you're going to move it all inside this year?
Yeah, so the main reason behind the noise violations is because during the pandemic, there was a need for the classes to take place outside. Many of those classes took place in the parking area. Now, to the extent that there were any classes, they actually have shifted the location, so it's in the back of the building, and only during the summer months on a very limited basis. And so I certainly, Mary Claire can speak to that further. But the primary basis behind the violations, of which there have not been any recently, was because of the location and where they were. And it was driven by the fact that they had to be outside because of COVID. So that has gone away. So there's no need to have them in that location anymore.
Okay.
Mayor, I would just ask, what time will the outdoor classes be beginning?
So if any, it would be a special event situation, and it would be in the evening during the summer.
Okay, so what I would suggest then, Mayor and Council, is that we put a caveat in the agreement indicating that anything outdoors would have to come through our Special Events Committee for a prior approval.
Okay. Does that work?
Great.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
I have no other questions. Seeing none and probably hearing none, congratulations.
Great, thank you. Was the extension request was it for the same time period, the 3 years that had been granted in prior terms?
No, it's your request. What
Okay.
you applied
We'd applied for
That's what's in here.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure, because in some years, initially, I think it was done for 1 year, but it was always, they came back in front of this board or in front of the planning board because there were changes to the site plan. So here, simply because it's the same exact use, we were seeking the 3-year extension.
And what we'll do is we'll modify this and put it on the next agenda for council approval.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great holiday.
We are now on to matters from City Council. Councilmember Chapman?
Hi, everyone. So I just want to let everyone know that on December 3rd, there'll be a holiday tree lighting in Fireman's Park. There'll be a visit with Santa Claus, music, refreshments. And on the 11th, there'll also be a tree lighting in Kwanzaa in Springwood Park. Again, Santa, refreshments, good times. And I just want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving.
Councilmember Kendall?
Yes, I'd like to also wish everyone a safe and blessed holiday. Thank you. That's all I have.
Deputy Mayor Quinn?
No, nothing, thank you.
Mayor Moore?
This past Saturday, November 20th, the New Jersey State PBA gave out their Vower Awards, and I was fortunate to attend, and 3 officers from Asbury Park were honored. Bronze Medal of Valor went to Sergeant Francis Sanji, to Officer James Crawford, and a Life-Saving Award went to Officer Perlene Valcine. So Asbury Park did very well as far as getting Vower Awards for 2020.
So I'm just going to bring up one thing because now you made me think of it. And Eileen, you should bring up the award that the city got for sustainability. So Eileen and I went to the League of Municipalities in Atlantic City. It's a yearly conference that, you take trainings and learn how to govern better. You do a variety of things. Anyway, we were asked to sit on a panel regarding harm reduction, kind of, just speaking a little bit to what I was talking to earlier today, and spent 90 minutes hearing how Asbury Park has one of the most successful needle exchange programs in New Jersey, in a city that was currently, Atlantic City, fighting their current needle exchange. So, kudos to our administration, kudos to our social services department, and especially kudos to VNA, who have continued to run a successful needle exchange program since 2016. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that.
And also, we were awarded a silver certificate for sustainability. We were one of 3 municipalities in Monmouth County to receive this award, and the only one to have received it 3 years in a row. So I'd like to acknowledge again our city staff, our green team, and everyone who helps to make this a more sustainable community.
Done?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just finish up wishing everybody a happy and a safe Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Matters from the city manager.
I have nothing, Melanie.
Matters from the city attorney.
And I have nothing either, Melanie.
Before we open the meeting to the public, I would just like to announce that Resolution 2021-494 has been removed from the agenda. May I have a motion to open the public comment portion of the meeting with a 3-minute time limit for each speaker?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
So do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah. So, go ahead.
or somebody.
John, go for it.
So at the end of the regular meeting, we're going to have a special meeting, continuation of the meeting to talk about rent level and rent control. If you want to talk about it now, I can't stop you, but I mean, when we get to the right time, that should probably be where you state your case, whatever. So if anybody has anything else about anything in the city, they can get up and talk now.
Please
help
come to the
yourself.
mic.
Yep, mhm.
State your name and address for the record.
Behind you.
Behind you, sir.
Oh, I'm hoping I didn't have to sit and look at this guy. Good evening, members of the City Council. Good evening, public. My name is Darrell Stroud. For the purposes of the record, my business address is 80 Cottontail Lane, Somerset, New Jersey. I'm here on behalf of residents of 1100 Atlantic Avenue and 120 Monmouth Road or Avenue in Asbury Park. It's Divided Gardens in Stephen Manor. To my understanding, and we've been on email, several council members and code enforcement as well. I did meet with Mr. Goodman from code enforcement, and he has, put some pressure on the property managers there. There's been no heat in over 2 months. There's still to date a few residents that tell me they still have no heat. Property management has lied to the city. Property management has lied to code enforcement. Property management has lied to HUD. And so there needs to be a fix for these residents. People can't be without heat. These property managers are just treating them any kind of way. There's a rodent infestation. There are roaches in some units. Units aren't being exterminated. And it seems that when code enforcement was contacted the other day, all of a sudden residents are starting to be on the list. Furthermore, residents are being threatened and disrespected by property management, hung up on, the phone is being taken off with a hook. No emergency contact information, and it's just ridiculous. And so something needs to be done. Hopefully the city council can reach out. We've been in touch with HUD. We've been in touch with pretty much everybody that we can be. And it's been over 2 months and people are still without heat, and it's unrealistic. So thank you very much. I'll yield the rest of my time. There are residents from those properties, as well as Tracy from the Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition. Thank you for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you. Donna or Michael, you want anything? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is John Morris, and I've been up here a few times over the years representing disabled veterans, Chapter 85 in Asbury Park, and Monmouth Elks Lodge on 122 Asbury Avenue. As a business or Elks. We've existed in the city under my leadership for the last 10 years, trying to recover the property. During the recovery process, there was a tax put on the property with penalties, which we had to pay in order to get funds to rebuild the property. And that cost us over $100,000. And that put a hole in our rebuilding plan when the COVID came along. So we had a construction loan, we got behind it, everything. So now we have a property for sale. And the problem in selling the property is commercial rated. We were built back to commercial rated. And I talked to the realtor today. They said the city, when they checked the zoning, said the property had to be sold back to commercial, not commercial, as a social. Our exemption as a 501(h)(c) says that the Elks Lodge only gets tax exemptions for its property. And that goes back to 1908 in this town. But yet we were charged taxes that inhibit us from building. Now we're charged again, saying that we have to go through the process of selling it as a social club and not as a commercial property after we expended all our effort and money and put those codes into effect at the behest of city construction. We spent over $20,000 in drawings, and to date we put over $600,000 into the building in the reconstruction, and we can't complete it, so we decided to sell it. So we feel that the city is not treating the organization properly, and this is not the first time, but it's a numerous times over the years. So we had talked to an attorney, we talked to the realtor, and we will come back and we'll have to express it legally. And the only reason I'm here tonight is because this was the last straw. I've had veterans that started out with me in this project, over 7 of them died from COVID. And we have been working on this project for 10 years. We got some assistance from local help, and a lot of the money came from us taking out loans and taking out our disability money, pay for the project. So the Elks Lodge has been in the city since 1908, and we still, if not at that site, tend to function somewhere around there in the city. So we'd like the city council to look into the tax matter and address it appropriately to the lodge, because it seems to me, in the 10 years that I've been involved, there's been 2 separate standards. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, and you and I have talked many times throughout the years, and sometimes to your benefit, probably not enough. I don't know if you were aware of this new change. So, I mean, it's the first time we're hearing about, like, you can't sell it for commercial. Let us look into it, and it's being a short week because of Thanksgiving. Either you reach out to Don, the city manager, and we'll have a meeting. I know we've met before, and it hasn't always gone the way you wanted it to, but you always get our attention and the best we can do. Okay. Again, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Tracy?
Excuse me. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Tracy Rogers, Soul Avenue. First, I have to talk on 2 matters. One is the ordinance. I may not be here for the end of the meeting, but Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition basically looked at the amendments, and we agree with the amendments. Not that we don't think that there should be more changes, but we do agree that you've made an attempt to make it better. Most of these residents are being affected. We've seen through the changes economically, if we don't have any control over this housing, reducing the amount of cost, we're gonna be heavily affected by more people being pushed out of the city. If you look at the census, 39% of African Americans were pushed out of Asbury Park in the last 10 years. This is the census data. So right now we need to discuss that. The other thing is, Darrell had brought to my attention what was happening at Stephen Manor and Bodyguard. So I went over there and I went around and I took my time to walk through these apartments. And what I found was disgraceful, because these are our residents that we were sitting there allowing to go without heat for such a long time. I saw one of the tenants who jumped out of her car, who was with a young girl who was almost 10. And I would not have had my daughter in a house that had no heat for these last couple of weeks. So we have to look more empathetically. When we put it together, our ordinance, and I spoke to this council, it was not just about rent, it was about code enforcement, about making sure property owners managed and respected these residents. When I went to a resident whose apartment was well kept, and she told me that she got disrespected from the property manager, hung up on, doesn't feel that she can even call over there, there's a problem. This is a beautiful elderly woman that felt that she could not even reach out to her property management and get effective help. Now, we as a city has to be responsible for what we're doing in the city. There's bad actors and they need to be addressed. I mean, fining is all well and good, but we need to embarrass, we need to go after, and we need to address these situations. Not one of these people should be disrespected in their living conditions because I don't think any of you would want the same thing. So to sit there and go through this is ridiculous. And I won't stand for it anymore. If I have to go over there every day and inspect every apartment, then I'll do that. But we're going to get some justice to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Derek, can I put this up? Derek Bloom, First Avenue. I do apologize. I also have to get my son, so I can't stay all the way to the very end of the meeting. So I will be talking about the rent stabilization ordinance. But definitely wanted to start out by commending the council and the equity committee for hiring the social worker to go out with the police so that our residents who have mental health issues are taken care of. That's really amazing. And just being parts of group that have worked on that issue, really feel listened to. So it's just really appreciate you and making that happen. It's really great. To the ordinance, really love that you capped it at 3.5. I think that's great. Excited that we went from 5 units to 3 units that will be affected by rent control. And then also excited that you put some control on vacancy decontrol, not allowing anyone who has applied for a hardship and gotten the hardship to get vacancy decontrol for 3 years. So I see those as 3 really huge things and appreciate that and feel listened to, and I'm excited to see the process. But the 2 things that I think the Affordable Housing Coalition would recommend and that we would feel would help us have a more equitable city. One, still, I was just informed today that I realized that 2-unit houses, it covers 9.9% of our housing. So really in reflecting, I think it would be really great if we could actually put it 2 to 5 units, and that would cover 10% more of our city that would have the protections of rent stabilization. So look into that. And then lastly, I do really love the 3.5 cap and that you didn't tie it to CPI. I think that was a great thing. But with vacancy decontrol, if vacancy decontrol is almost laissez-faire, allowing the landlords to kind of do whatever they want, it kind of hurts the 3.5 cap. So there'll be the 3.5% cap for rent control, but anytime someone moves out, the landlords can kind of raise rent as they please. So, really looking at New Brunswick and Hoboken, I think that there really needs to be a few more controls. And I understand, and I've been part of the process with the city. I think you really did try to listen to landlords, landlords and tenants rights organizers and try to come up with an ordinance. But I do really believe with vacancy decontrol that if we don't put a cap on it, saying that you can't just raise it every year, maybe make it every 2 to 3 years, there's vacancy decontrol. And I would really recommend to cap it at 7%. Even if you go up to 10%, it goes a little too high. So I think to not put any more controls on vacancy decontrol is really to kind of adhere to the landlords and not compromise in the middle. So I guess that's what I have to say, but thanks for y'all's work.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else, motion to close.
Move to close? Well, we're going to do an overview of the ordinance at the end of the council meeting.
I'm Ron Simoncini, Asbury Park Property Owners Coalition. Just want to talk about apartment conditions in Asbury Park, not rent control. Apartment conditions are governed by your buildings department. And if there are these conditions that Tracy talked about and other people referenced, those certainly should be addressed specifically by people who've been in place here for 40 or 50 years doing the same inspection job that I believe has been done adequately. But if it's not being done adequately, it should be conditioned based on the place in government where it's regulated and not credited to things in government that can't regulate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing nobody, motion to close.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is now closed to the public. Oh.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Burrows, and I live at 1100 Stephen Madison apartment. I just moved in there this year, April. I don't have a fire extinguisher. They didn't put one in there. The cabinets are already falling off. The roaches, and the stuff that goes on around the building. We got a door where it's supposed to be locked for us to use our key to get in. Anybody can get in there. We done seen people in there shooting up drugs, eating, sleeping in the hallway. You don't have a lock there no more. The front door has a lock, and that's where we go out through the back. The front door, you have to use a key to get in. The back door is supposed to be the same way. There's buttons up there for you to call somebody. You pick up their phone. That don't even work. And I moved from one street over from Washington Avenue, thinking this is going to be better. This is worse. I just moved in there April 1st. Cabinets are coming off. The stove, they put the stove in there. I can only use 3 eyes. The 4th eye, they must have propped the knob up there, so when I touched it, it fell right off. That's all I have to say. Y'all have a blessed Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
The meeting is now closed to the public, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how you gotta see it.
We are now on to minutes. I have the minutes of the Municipal Council Executive Meeting of November 10th, 4 p.m. The Municipal Council Regular Meeting, November 10th of 6 p.m. Do I have a motion?
Move it. Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
We're on to individual resolutions. The first individual resolution is Resolution 2021-490, a resolution approving special event applications. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-491, a resolution approving the payment of bills. Motion.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
No.
Resolution 2021-492, a resolution amending a contract with Stavola Asphalt Company for asphalt.
Move it. Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-493, a resolution amending a contract with Monmouth County for milling and paving of various roads.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-495, a resolution authorizing the purchase of an ambulance disinfection system.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-496, a resolution authorizing the purchase of 2 police vehicles and related equipment needed.
Move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-497, a resolution authorizing the purchase of an ambulance for the fire department.
Move it.
Did I have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn. Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-498, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a police speed alert trailer.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-499, a resolution authorizing the purchase of lumber and hardware for beach lockers.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-500, a resolution authorizing the purchase of various computers and accessories needed for the citywide computer replacement.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call. Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn?
Yes.
Mayor Moore?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-501, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a server needed for the IA Pro software at the Police Department.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call, Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-502, a resolution authorizing the purchase and installation of an automated license plate reader, ALPR, for the speed alert trailer at the Police Department.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call, Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
We're now on to ordinances for first reading. We have Ordinance 2021-38, which is the 2021 Transportation Update Ordinance with a public hearing date of December 8th. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Roll call, Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
We are now on to presentation. We will have a presentation of the rent leveling ordinance revision by Neil Murata, Esquire, and Robert Goodman, the Director of Community Development, followed by an open public comment period.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As noted, we have reviewed the ordinance line by line. We have as...
You got your microphone.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor and Council, as you know, we've looked through the ordinance line by line. We have, in committee, discussed how we could improve this. We've also met as a full executive team to discuss these changes, and we've come up with a number of revisions which we believe will make the rent leveling ordinance better. As has been noted by some of the commentators during the public participation, we have simplified the rent increase going from a CPI-based calculation, which was confusing to a number of landlords that had called into our office. We've moved it to a simple 3.5%, and have removed all references to CPI. In addition, we've reduced the applicability of buildings that would come under this ordinance from 5 down to 3 or more residential units. We also have made a minor modification to prohibit the vacant decontrol for any unit that has been granted a hardship appeal increase in the prior 3 years. The last 4 items, I'll go through them one by one, were pretty much clarifications on the role of the registration process for landlords, the responsibility of the landlord to advise tenants of their rights and provide access to New Jersey Department of Community Affairs Truth in Renting Act information, as well as clarifying the Rent Leveling Board's role and responsibilities, as well as clarification of the city's administrative roles and responsibilities as well. The completed redlined version of this ordinance was posted to the website on Monday, November 15th, and it was given a week to solicit open comment. Submission form was allowed to accept electronic commentary. The clerk is in possession of that, and we'll read that into the record now. Before we begin that part, is there any question from the mayor and council?
No, we're good.
I will now read the comments that have been submitted online by the members of the public. The first comment I have is from Jennifer Cubis. As a longtime renter and worker in Asbury Park, I am pleased to see the following suggested revisions. Ordinance protection to include dwellings of 3 units or more, the CPI removed, the maximum annual increase capped at 3.5%, and the role of the rent regulation officer clarified. It has been extremely frustrating to attempt attending the September and November rent leveling meetings only for them to be canceled, especially when October was skipped or unscheduled. However, if the proposed revisions to the ordinance are evidence of work being done behind the scenes, very well, and I support them. Thank you. The second comment is Mark Lindsay. regarding 15-3A. The number of apartment units in buildings subject to these regulations should absolutely not change from 5 to 3. This is undue and unnecessary discrimination on landlords. The next comment, Catherine Healy. Hello, I want to first thank you for listening to the CPI concerns raised by myself and others over the past year, especially as we are going into a historic inflation period and taking action. I also appreciate the reconsideration in what dwellings fall under the ordinance. I'm still concerned about these mega landlords in town, like our next door neighbor though, who have pushed out lower income tenants in order to now charge $2,500 to $3,000 for an apartment in their shoddily built house. I would love to hear more about how the ordinance changes would continue to address this issue of vacancy decontrol that allows many larger landlords, like my neighbor, to solely view housing as a commodity. Thanks again for hearing the public on a few of these issues and taking action. I do not think there will be more attention to this ordinance with the latest property assessments coming out and what that will look like for our bills, but I hope there is a broader conversation around the property assessments instead of just passing the raised tax burdens to the tenants. I look forward to more conversations around this ordinance. Sincerely, Catherine Healy.
Hold on a second. Sir, officer, can you please tell the people in that vestibule to take it outside?
The next comment is from Andrea Goldman. Amend the ordinance to protect the renters, regardless of what kind of housing they live in or how many units their landlord has in the building or whenever it's a new lease. Tie increases to CPI or 3.5%, whichever is lower. Most people's employers don't give annual raises, let alone tie them to CPI. So any guaranteed increase at all is a pretty good thing. You, the council members, are giving landlords a legal right to more of their renters' money, even if the renter, him or herself, doesn't get a raise that year. Their landlord still gets one, paid from their own pocket, even if the landlord doesn't improve anything. This is more than generous. If you're going to promise owners other people's money, then the least you can do is tie it to the CPI and set a reasonable limit like 3.5. Tie hardship to landlord financial burden, one that directly impacts the unit in question. Limit hardship increase to 3.5%. Condition yearly increase on full code compliance to incentivize landlords to maintain their properties. Rent decrease when unit is not in compliance. For example, a 15% deduction when plumbing is broken, a 50% or more during a period of health code violations or while heat is out, etc. It's really important that you do this. Really, it is everything. No one is making people be landlords. It is a choice, and one they make unilaterally. It is not like they had to apply for the gig. If someone wants to own other people's housing, then just do it. You're the only 5 people in town with the power to incentivize them to work professionally and responsibly and hold them accountably when they don't. Consequences. That's what we teach our kids when they don't do the right thing. It's entirely reasonable to hold adults to the same standard, especially adults who choose to be in charge of other people's housing. You 5 are the only ones who can make this happen. Again, this is everything. Tie rent control to the unit itself so the protections won't expire just because someone moves out and another person moves in. I said it in my first bullet point, but it is just so important you decide to protect all the renters. Boards should consist only of renters and landlords and only those who have fully disclosed all of the addresses they have financial interest in. So the public already knows ahead of time if or when a board member will have to recuse him or herself due to a conflict of interest. Landlords on board should include at least 2 who own fewer than 10 units. The next comment is from Pam Lamberton. I strongly support the modifications to the rent leveling ordinance. I really appreciate the timely review. I hope additional review and modifications to vacancy decontrol section will happen soon. These are our friends and neighbors who are being forced to leave Asbury Park. Thank you. The next comment from Ben Hall. Removing the CPI provision is ludicrous, especially in light of recent data. This is a disgrace. Please vote no. The next comment is from Mark Hadnett. So number of units have been proposed to be changed to residential 3 family versus commercial 5 units. Plus, under section 15-3-A, why are they changing to only include 3 units plus? What was the reason for this change and not to include all properties at this stage? Do the town feel they would get too much refusal to adopt? There are also different rules for commercial versus residential. 4 units and below, which should also be taken into consideration when changing it to a residential for the town. The other proposal I would add is under tax credit for tenants. Landlord will need to pay a % of any reduction in taxes. I believe it should also stand true if the town increases property taxes. There should be the ability on the property owner to increase this amount fairly in rents. We talk about it being fair. That section just seems like a direct attack on property owners and a bunch of potential liability with getting numbers wrong for the property owner if there is a tax reduction. I'm all for the tax savings being passed to tenants, but the same must be made true if taxes increase. If the town are not for that, I would be very interested to hear why. Regards, Mark. And that completes the comments of the public from online.
Okay, so we're gonna open up the microphone. The council is here this evening to listen. There's no vote scheduled for tonight, so no action is being taken. I'm asking everyone that you will please be respectful to everybody, and I'm telling everybody there will be no cross conversations. If not, unfortunately, you will be escorted out. So let's everybody just behave, talk, and listen. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're here to gather information, not to respond to anything.
Please state your name and address for
My
the
name is
record.
Shirley Cruz Davis, 603 First Avenue. I'm here to speak about the amendments. I'm happy about that. Actually, that's what I wanted. I live in a 4-unit rental. I've been here 14 years. So Asbury Park has become my home. I've raised my granddaughter here. She's 10. She doesn't know anything but Asbury Park. We are being priced out. My rent is going up $700 on my renewal of my unit. With nothing done, nothing fixed. I mean, absolutely nothing. I've fixed things in there. I've painted, I've done everything. That's unconscionable. I'm not the only one that this is happening to. What's happening is anytime they know an ordinance is coming, they raise the rents on whoever's, if your lease is coming up before it's enacted. So I don't think if you enact something, it should not take 3 months. If you enact it, it should be within 30 days. That should happen. Right now, it's coming towards the end of the year, and I'm not the only one that I'm gonna be priced out with a child, a dog, and a cat, with nowhere to go from my home. And I mean, the things that happen is that code also doesn't follow up on any of this. I have called code, I have put in complaints, and some of them have not even been looked at. We had a break-in on the other side of town, well, not far from us, a guy with a knife. There's a ladder on the house he lives in, same owner, that goes up the side of the building and it's attached. And I can climb up there and go into 2 apartments. That's a hazard, that's dangerous. It's mostly women that live in both buildings. We should be protected from that. That's a code violation. Just things like that. There's a scaffold that's been up for 3 years. It goes like this in the wind. I mean, what's it gonna take that it falls this way or it falls that way? Their property is gonna be damaged, but people are also gonna be hurt. So, I mean, that's basically what I have to say. It's just, I feel that we're being priced out. The ones that have been here a long time are being pushed even further out. I mean, a lot of the people that are suffering also work here. They work in our schools. They work here in this complex, and they're struggling too. So it's not just families like mine. I mean, everyone's feeling it. I get that. The landlords are feeling it. Everything has gone up. But at some point, things have to level out. That it's even for everyone. That no one is being basically kicked out of their home, that's all they know here. They've got to start off here again. When in fact, there is nowhere to go. If you look at things across the country, there's nowhere to go. There really isn't. At least for someone like me, there's nowhere for me to go. And that's all I have to say.
Ma'am, can I ask you to repeat your address, please?
603 First Avenue, Apartment 1.
Thank you.
Matthew Sigmund, 700 Emery Street. I'm a landlord in town.
I'm sorry, could you say your address again? I couldn't hear you.
700 Emery Street, Asbury Park.
Thank you.
If you own real estate in Asbury Park, the time to sell is now. The storm is coming. This rent ordinance will only exacerbate the issue. We have the following things coming down the pipeline, just from an economic perspective. Higher interest rates mean that values go down. Evictions and foreclosures are going to increase the supply. Values will go down. The Asbury Park school budget is this looming 800-pound gorilla that is going to be passed on to the burdens of the houses and everyone else in real estate here. And then the rent leveling will also hurt values in real estate in Asbury Park. So coupled all this together, I think you're going to have a pretty disastrous effect on the values of Asbury Park. So I think it'd be probably about 15% for people. And then if the taxes go up and you can't raise rents only 3.5% because there's no CPI, you're losing money. So I dug into this. I'll email it to Melody so you guys, if I get cut off in time, but here's what I wrote. 15.2, what would be the process of removing CPI? How else can we track costs and properly adjust them to rents? CPI is an economic indicator letting consumers know the change in the price of goods over time. This is exactly what needs to be used to give ability to landlords to change accordingly so they're not getting less money because of inflation. We're seeing inflation go up as well. It needs to be accounted for. So if landlords are getting more rent because the CPI is more, it's really not more money. It's the same amount of money, just adjusted differently over time. That can be construed as more money. The rent leveling board is now stripped of 15.2. The rent leveling board is now stripped of its power to administer the ordinance. This is consolidating power into one more person. I mean, not for nothing, but we're hiring administrators to write administrative law. Amy and I had a very nice frank conversation about a person that we both know, and we're doing all this paperwork, all this type of organization of data for the less than 1% of people that don't have their paperwork. If some tenant gets raised 10% and comes to the board, the rent regulator ordinance person, and says, hey, I think I've been only unfairly just, send that landlord a certified letter. Say, hey, landlord, produce your lease, produce what you're doing. Don't make every single landlord do all this extra documents. We don't have all that information. We don't have square footages. I can't waste time and do all that. Not to mention also every single time a landlord fills out a CO, I need the tenant to sign a notice that they got their disclosures. I mean, you're asking us to put it in the buildings, that's fine, but these are adults. I mean, it's just so much more burden on the city because we're having administrators that have to administer all this, have all this data tape, organize all this paperwork. If you're affected, go to the rent regulator or whatever person and say, hey, and then send me a certified letter that you need this or you get fined $2,000. And then if there's fault, there's fault. All this extra paperwork and all this cumbersome stuff, it's just overkill. I'm gonna get cut off in time. I'll email this unless you guys would like me to go further because I have a lot of good points here that addresses the ordinance.
No, we're gonna let everybody get 3 minutes.
If we want to circle back.
No. You can get a second bite at the apple so you can finish up. But I want.
Yeah, I'll just continue from our end.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
But you should also email it to us, Matt, so we can process it in our.
And then I'd love to sit and talk and try to make this work because we're going backwards. We're going with a lot of red tape.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing nobody else wants to be heard. Okay.
We're waiting on Ron.
Such a childish thing to do. Matt Daniels, 1026 Monroe Avenue, Asbury Park, New Jersey. It's very good to see everybody here. City Council, Mayor Moore, the Property Owners Coalition, Ron. It's very great that we all care about this so much that we are here a couple days before Thanksgiving. When City Council passed the rent control ordinance in March, and it came with a bit of, I don't want to say, but I guess I'll say caveat that it could be changed. I know some of us didn't quite exactly know what that would look like or what that would mean. And just to see that it's happening now, that does inspire some hope. I do love the changes that are presented to us. I think that going from 5 to 3 instead of 5 to 2, and as Derek alluded to, leaving out about 10% of Asbury Park, I think that we could do a little better. I think that if we include that, those two residential housing units, instead of just going down to 3, then we can curtail process of kicking out or pushing out a lot of the residents of Asbury Park that have been pushed out, or that, that people that look like them have been pushed out, people from the west side. There's a lot of duplexes on the west side. I personally live in a duplex on the west side. And so it does exist. I know that I know that we had a lot of contention back in March, but I know the one thing that we could agree upon, especially from the council and Mayor Moore's perspective, is that the city as a whole needed rent control, and that's why you guys passed that. But the main thing is that the city as a whole needs rent control. And if we're leaving out that 10%, close to it, then there's a portion of Asbury Park that is ostracized, that will be pushed out. And that portion mainly is on the west side. I think that everything else we can reconsider, as you guys have shown you be able to do. But at the same time, I think we need to start from a place in which all or most of the residents of Asbury Park are covered in this ordinance. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Can we go around? We'll come challenge. That was good. Thanks.
Tracy Roger Sewell. I got to get out of here. Right now, I had to rush through. I didn't think I was going to be here, but right now.
Tracy, what number on Sewell? 1032?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, what we're looking for is an ideal as to how we can work together and get most of these things solved. Right now, if we went and did a survey of everybody that needed rent control and who their landlords were, and we looked at what units versus we were trying to attack, I think if we broke down the single family units, we broke down the duplexes, we would see substantially that a lot of our tenants need protection. The increased amount of rent, from one person standing here saying she got a rent increase of $700, shows the injustice that we have to monitor so many people. And I don't want to have to do that. Mr. Sigmund doesn't want to have to do that. If he wants to sit down with me anytime and we can go through these numbers and his issues, we can talk about things, but you can't stop people from being bad actors. And the sense of it all, we all get trapped into that same model that we have to look at. I think we're unjustly taking out a segment of people if we know more people need it. We have to protect everyone here until we get to that point. And right now, I do appreciate what you did with the CPI. You did better than we did. But, the only reason we put it in was the fact that everybody wants to see what you're doing and how you're doing it. And we set it at a flat fee. But if you guys did it, it says the council sees that there's a need to stop it, so we don't have to work off the CPI. We continue to talk about just the truth in what we're doing. So I just want to refocus that if anybody wants to sit down with the Asbury Park Affordable Housing and go through the whole ordinance to try to get it to where we need to be. But in 3 years, if we can start putting in these practices, we can direct where we want to go and what the city that we want to look at. So I appreciate you guys taking this and readjusting what you're doing. As Derek said, we want to go a little bit further. I want to go a little bit further. Other people don't. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Krasutsky, 610 Sewell Ave. I'd like to start off like past two other speakers and really commend the council for how promptly you guys put these amendments on the books. I really think it shows a serious commitment on your behalf to making sure that this rent control ordinance is something that is actively maintained and taken seriously. So for that, you have my sincere and heartfelt appreciation. I also like the amendments that are being proposed here today. I think that considering the price of real estate here in New Jersey and on the Jersey Shore and how fast it's going up, and I know, Ron did call me childish, but I do understand why property owners are upset and concerned and that they're fearful. Monmouth County is the only county in the entire state that reassesses property value every year. And so between now and then, I know you want to obviously get that benefit in, but at the end of the day, you have vacancy decontrol still. And I know that Tracy as well as others have proposed opening up that conversation, but I don't necessarily think we're there yet, seeing as that's a conversation about future renters here in Asbury, not renters that are currently here now. And talking about those renters that are currently here now, as Matt alluded to before, there are plenty of people who live in duplexes, and I don't know how many single unit apartments there are, single unit buildings, but there are a lot of people who live in duplexes. They're all around me, they're all around Matt, and I know, and most of these folk come from working class backgrounds. And to be honest, I don't see how we can adequately evaluate the efficacy of a rent control ordinance if it doesn't apply to all renters, right? And at the end of the day, it's going to garner us data and feedback that's going to guide this council and guide this ordinance to a place in which you can settle somewhere comfortably. And so again, I think we all understand where each other are coming from. But the only issue I take is why not bring it down from 3 to 2? At the end of the day, there's no sound difference between renters in 2-unit buildings or renters in 3-unit buildings. Their rent can be raised all the same. And I think from what another previous speaker had said, landlords are doing it. I'm not saying any landlords here necessarily, but there is an added incentive there, especially if you see 2 units come down the pike, to keep raising rent on those 2-unit buildings you own so that you can get in under the wire. And again, I'm not, casting aspersions or saying anyone's doing that, but again, I'll leave it at this. I always say good policy is not necessarily always determined by obvious good intentions, but oftentimes it's defined by its discrete harms, right? And it's how we think about those discrete harms and how they interfere with the mission of this ordinance and how exactly we're going to confront it that's going to get us to the other side here. And I think we can all agree that having this ordinance cover all renters, as well as keeping it at a flat cap for now, and then I'm incredibly happy that the landlords got the clarification they needed on their end as it pertains to the registration fees. So I think we let this play out, get the data, come back, and then talk. If we get through it, then vacancy decontrol. So we can debate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Simoncini, Asbury Park Property Owners Coalition again.
I think your address.
301 Route 17 North, Rutherford.
Thank you.
So I think that Hoboken and New Brunswick were brought up as prospective models for this ordinance, but this municipality is nothing like Hoboken and New Brunswick. And the issues that the municipality faces are nothing like those issues, and the history of rent control is nothing like the history of rent control in those places, both of which I've consulted in and both of which I've had referendums in. This city looks to me a lot more like Neptune and Morristown than it does those places. And one of the reasons is because the introduction of rent control is a very important moment. Once you have rent control in a community and you've said to somebody in that community, your rent will now be protected forever, you can't pare that back from them. I've never argued that in 30 years of rent control opposition. A deal's a deal at that point. And that's why I want to talk about I know we're going to get another bite at this, but I want to talk the first thing about the registration issue. The registration issue is the point of no return issue. Once you create the municipal bureaucracy that's required to maintain and manage that, you get what I see in Union City. I know Neil's here, he's the attorney there. Last Monday night in Union City, there was an absolutely mind-blowing decision based on rental registration issues that opens up about 50 calculations to appeal. That's going to cost that city millions of dollars in legal fees to figure out why the ordinance was misadministered for 15 years. And it was for political reasons. And once you register rents here and you have everybody's name, the temptation to find a way to give everybody a break will take over. And it's non-economic, it's not equitable, it's not just, there's no rationale for it, except I'm gonna take what one guy gets and I'm gonna give it to somebody else who can vote for me. And I'm not saying any of the 5 people on this council are subject to that right this minute, but you're not gonna be here forever. Each of you has an expiration date stamped right on your forehead. You can extend that once in a while. You guys have been very lucky, managed the town well. You continue to be rewarded for that with people voting for you. See what happens when you start getting telephone calls about influence related to rent registration. Your attorney right here, I'd love a chance to interview him in front of you about what the history was in Union City that's purely related to rent registration. Nothing that we hear here tonight about complaints about conditions has anything to do with rent registration. In fact, no comment we've heard here tonight has any policy implication related to rent registration. You simply don't need it. It simply creates a bureaucracy that's intended to be manipulated. And I'll come back for my second bite. I respect what everybody said here tonight. Nothing crazy from anybody. I think this is a good dialogue, and it shows that Asbury Park has really come a long way.
Okay.
Second bite.
Thank you. Hi, I just want to, is this on?
It's on.
All right, good evening, Carrie Butch. I don't know where we are in the agenda.
Your name and address, Carrie. Name and address for the record.
Okay, Carrie Butch, 500 Deal Lake Drive. I just want to comment about the ordinance, the rent control ordinance, and I apologize, I just got here. But understand the power of Ron. He comes with a lot of money, because he came with a lot of money to defeat our ordinance. So he just threatened you guys. This time, work with the people, make sure that we keep the big money folks at bay, because he's not from Asbury Park. He's not interested in the good of the people that live in Asbury Park. Listen to the people who've been fighting and working with this community to take care of the people who are from the city of Asbury Park and who are living in the city of Asbury Park during hyper-gentrification. So this is why we came to you guys and said, we need a rent control ordinance, because we want to keep people in town. The heavy money that came in during the rent control, we should take a look at and we should have a conversation about. The flyers and everything else that came into town, basically lying, we should have a conversation about. But since we're talking about the ordinance now, I apologize for being late. I wanted to say, I like a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing with the ordinance. I appreciate you guys being much more for the community, and I want to talk about the 3.5% flat increase. The cap, I like the cap being 3.5%, but I do think it's important that we go back to the CPI, because the CPI is going to go down. It's going to be 1 point whatever. It's going to be 2 point whatever. If you think about the 3.5, I'm going to do a sample 1-bedroom and a sample 2-bedroom. A sample 1-bedroom in Asbury Park is $1,800 a month. A 3.5% increase raises the rent over 3 years. You'll get an additional $195 a month rent. You'll get an additional $23.50 for families, 1-bedroom. After 3 years, you're paying an additional $2,350 a year when you cap it and when you just do a flat 3.5. If you did something where it was CPI, where it followed the CPI or lesser, right? I'm sorry, the 3.5 or lesser, that was the word that we wanted in, that was changed in the original ordinance. We put in lesser, you guys changed it to greater, under a tremendous amount of pressure, I'm sure, from the landlords. But that 2% increase would still give a fair hike, which would be $1,320 after 3 years for a 1-bedroom, but it wouldn't kick people out the way that an automatic 3.5 does. Thank you very much.
Yep, and you can come back up to finish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you understand?
Hello, Peter Siegel, 1412 Main Street. Good evening, everybody. So first of all, I just want to say I too listened while our neighbor here to my right told the story about how rent is going up $700 at renewal, and I'm shocked and appalled to hear that, and I'm sorry to have heard that. And I agree that those are horrible situations, and I hope and wish that there's a way for property owners that increase rents by $700 or whatever these incredible amounts, that should not be the case. And I hope that there's something that can be, I don't know how, but that's a bad situation. You know, we all went through a very divisive debate and election in the earlier part of this year, culminating in an election in April. And the thing that I recall the community agreed on as a whole was that we needed to enact something to protect the people in our community who are renters who are here now from excessive rent increases. That was the overriding intent from all the parties. And I applauded at the time, and I applaud now City Council for having enacted an ordinance that did that. It protected our residents who are renters who are here now from excessive rent increases. And again, this is an example, our neighbor to my right who somehow felt is in a property, I don't know, that wasn't covered by the ordinance or has a bad actor, landlord or something. It's a hard story to hear. And I'm sorry to hear that. What I also heard during that campaign and that debate back earlier this year was that the council's ordinance could be changed if we found it wasn't working or if things needed to be changed. I mean, I sit on the rent control board and we haven't had one case, yet we're making changes to address what? Was something not working? Because we haven't had one case. We've been canceling meetings because there's nothing to talk about. So that sort of like stinks a little bit of political motivations, again, as it did back earlier this year. And I wish that stink wasn't being perceived, but it is. To my friend Carrie here to my left, thank you for bringing up those rental examples of a one-bedroom at $1,800. You know, that's a luxury one-bedroom unit that gets rented to someone that makes 80 grand or more a year. So, you know, thank you for advocating that someone who makes 80 grand a year receive rental protections at the cost of property owners. You know, I don't know how relevant that was, but thanks, and I'll perhaps take a second bite of the apple. I'm not sure, but I want to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet like to be heard? If not, anybody that has spoken can now be heard for 3 minutes, and then that's it.
Thanks, brother.
Ron Simoncini, Asbury Park Property Owners Coalition again.
Address?
Address.
301 Route 17 North, Rutherford.
Thank
you. So, I don't know why I'm so famous. You know, the idea that somebody who is here as an advocate for a living should be looked at differently than an attorney who's here as an advocate as well is really untasteful, I think. So the reason that I'm here is because I happen to know a lot about this. I've been doing this since I was in college and studying rent control and its impacts. And I went to college in St. Paul, Minnesota. And St. Paul, Minnesota just passed the most restrictive rent control ordinance in the country. And you know what happened? Capital flight within 1 week. 1 week? 700 units of development canceled in 1 week. That city is now frozen. They had passed a rent control ordinance without doing what you did, which was really think it through and understand its implications by having interviews and by assessing the ordinance over several months. These changes didn't come from that process. These changes came from people who have a motivation to implant a bureaucracy for rent control in Asbury Park. And I think you have to look at that. It's inescapable. I think the disclosure aspect of the rent control ordinance that you've proposed should go both ways. If people on the rent leveling board, rent control board are asked to disclose their relationships with people who prospectively could influence a decision, you must ask your professionals and the other people who are serving that rent control board the exact same question. And I think you're going to be shocked at the answer you get. As far as CPI relevance is concerned, I would go for CPI forever. Because right now what CPI is being driven by is wage increases. People's incomes are rising, which is causing costs of goods to rise. When people's incomes rise, they can afford to pay higher rent. So I'd go for CPI. I think 3.5 is fine, though. I don't think that those are huge issues, but I think you have to look at the implications of these things a little bit more deeply than, well, let's pick a number. And I know that you've done that by saying we don't want CPI because when CPI goes above 3.5%, it sure is going to cost people a lot more money. But the people that it's going to cost more money to run the apartment complexes suffer also. And so CPI is a very good balance, and I'd go with Carrie. If you want to make it 1% when it's 1%, fine. But when it's 6%, it's got to be 6%. You got to be honest about it. You can't make it 1% when it's right for the tenant and 1% when it's right for the tenant, and never when it's right for the landlord. The last thing I would say is that it was 4 months of discussion before the election, 7 months since the election, and 1 week of comment on what are some relatively straightforward changes. But 1 week of comment with Thanksgiving here, it just really wasn't enough. And I would hope that you take these suggestions that you're getting tonight under advisement and convene some hearings in addition to the ones you're having tonight so that you can ask additional questions later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Sigmund, 700 Emory Street, Asbury Park, New Jersey. So I'm going to continue with just some of my notes to everything. I'm going to email it as well. I agree with CPI. If it's 1 or 2%, it should be 1 or 2%. If it's 6 or 7 or 8%, it should be like that because of the costs. Changing the units from 5 to 3. Why would we change this into effect after the vote for a lesser ordinance? You know, we had this on the voting, and we voted for this, and now we're changing it to include more units. I see the tenant side is, you know, that's more units, but the people voted. I mean, we're a small group in here. The votes counted. We voted for that ordinance, and now we're making it, you know, more, I think, more aggressive, which I'm not sure why. We voted for it already in the get-go. I'm gonna talk about the registration. Like I said, I spoke to Amy about a common tenant that we both know and love. And for that person who doesn't have his stuff together, go to the city, send us a certified mail. We'll send you the lease and everything we have. A landlord could talk about, you know, with the city, anything that may come up that may be wrong. You fine them $2,000, we move on, instead of doing this huge administrative cost of organizing everything. I think the rent regulation officer has a lot of power in this. It's really consolidated. I mean, I get it. I mean, you know, they're here, but you know, they're administrators, they're lawyers, they're paid to do this, they're paid to organize. So we're asking them to do something, and that's, look, how do I do it? You know, it's just going to increase more costs and create more databases and a lot more legwork for landlords. The hardship increase and vacancy control are completely independent. If you're spending $100,000 on a facade, I'm doing a facade right now. If you're spending $100,000 on a facade, why can't I decontrol a unit? It's mutually, they're apples and giraffes. They're not the same thing. You shouldn't, if you're doing a facade, you shouldn't be able to not vacancy decontrol. I don't see the point in that. You know, and then I'm providing, you know, as a landlord, I'm providing all this information for tenants. We have to have them sign something and return it to the city. How is that going to be done? I mean, you know, I could tell you what it is from step 1 to step 0 of renting in a unit, showing it. Now I have to get something from the tenants to sign and bring it back in so they know about their rights. I mean, these are adults we're talking about here. If we post it on the walkways when they walk in, they go, these tenants all talk, they all know what's going on. I have to have them sign something in order for me to get another CO. It's just another hurdle in the process of a difficult task of a landlord of paying for the CO, scheduling CO, giving them another piece of paperwork. It's just cumbersome and overkill, and it creates more paperwork on the city side because this rent regulator has to then organize that. I then have to pay $10 to even qualify for a vacancy decontrol. If the tenant moves out and it's a new tenant that moves in, I'm charging market rent. I have to pay for that and disclose that and put that in another database. I think that's very cumbersome. The city manager could hire additional staff for this. That's written in there, so we could just hire more staff to do more administrative work. I mean, there's a lot of good points here. I don't know. It's just this is a lot going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Krasuski, 610 Sewell Ave. It's going to be a small bite, real small bite. I'll reiterate again, like, the comparisons to Union City are sometimes a little bit comical. I mean, you talk about it, Union City's got a population of 68,000 people. Asbury Park, I think it's closer to 12. And when you talk about influence, Union City is a Hudson County, it's embedded in Hudson County politics. It's a much more complicated political ecosystem we got here, but point's well made. As it pertains to CPI, I think that taking it off CPI, I know that 3.5 can seem arbitrary, but I think we could all agree the housing market here is experiencing an incredible boom, and that makes all of us very worried. And I think all of us are committed to staying here and living here, for the indefinite future, and seeing, how much inflation in prices occurs around here makes me worried that one day I might not be able to live here. And the last thing I'll say is, Peter had brought up $700 rent increase, which again, absurd. And I think the one thing that, is clear here is we all agree on one thing. We wish that something could be done. I do too. And there is something that could be done, believe it or not. It's called a rent control ordinance that covers all buildings, all renters, everywhere. And because guess what? These units not covered, whether it's a single unit building or duplex, right? Anything below 3, they can raise it $700. And we're not staking any claim as a city to say that is absolutely not acceptable. That there is a certain rent cap that there's a certain level that's unacceptable. You cannot raise rent that much. But in not including single units as well as duplexes, we are tacitly accepting that there is something we can do, but we're not willing to do it. No, I think they've been quite accommodating. You talk to them too. We all talk to them. And I think we all need to get on the same page with at least saying that all renters should be included here. There's something that can be done. And it's called include all buildings, all units, all renters.
Thank you.
I haven't been a single family home to pay $2,000 more a year in taxes.
Whoa. You don't want to be put out. You've been great.
I've done the apple, Tom.
No, okay, thank you.
Hello again, Peter Siegel, 1412 Main Street. I wanted to make 2 comments to close out my opportunity to speak tonight. Number 1, on the rent registrations form. We heard tonight from the director of housing when the bullet points were up on the screen that were clarifying points and simplifying points and streamlining the points to make them better. I mean, that's an opinion, that's not fact. So I'll just say that the rental registration, the proposed rental registration language is not clarification, it's not streamlining, and it's not an improvement. It's a nightmare, it's awful, it bears no relevance to enforcing the protection of tenant protections. We can succeed in offering tenants the protections that we all hoped to give them and voted on without this massive government information overreach and government grab of private data. And there's just no connection between that and capping increases at 3.5% or whatever. And the burdens that we have to jump through to have tenants sign these forms within 15 days. Are you kidding me? We send out rental renewals. They don't sign them, like we have to chase them down sometimes, like a lot of times. So now we got to get this, and there's fines and penalties and burdens that we have to suffer if we don't get the signatures. I mean, you got to be kidding me over that. Seriously. There's no correlation between these rental registrations and giving tenants protections. It's nauseating. There's so many other ways that are simple and effective and work. I proposed several over the year. I know that other people have proposed other methods as well. Please consider those. I was told as a rebuttal to my comment that it's very costly and very expensive to administer this ordinance. I was told, well, we already hired the person, so it's money that's already paid for. So now what, Peter? I mean, that's the most tone-deaf shit I've ever heard. We've already hired the person. There's a way to run this ordinance that doesn't burden and suck the budget dry and cost taxpayers money. I'm all for the rent protections, and I'm all for a lot of the things that this ordinance has. But there is a way to do it which is cost effective and and not cumbersome and burdensome on the property owners. And I'd love to see some real consideration given to that. And I know also that we're not creating policy to address certain racial groups that some people feel are being pushed out, because that would be against the law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie Butch, 500 Deal Lake Drive. I just wanted to get back up because I didn't do the 2-bedroom before. So a 2-bedroom under 3.5 increase over 3 years, you're going to pay an additional $3,000 and $65 in rent. If you go on like a 2-bedroom for $2,350. If you did it CPI and it was around 2%, it would be an additional $1,726. Still a healthy amount after 3 years if you're a landlord to get that, and almost $2,000 for a family. So I think that really using the CPI and just using the word lesser rather than greater could be much more the intent of what the rent control ordinance is about, which is about keeping people in town. And as far as like listening to, the sob stories about printing out a piece of paper and having a tenant sign that when they need to sign also another lease, or when they need to get those kind of things, really kind of, it's offensive. And what's the reason why you wouldn't want somebody to know their rights and responsibilities as a tenant? You should want that. If you're in the business of providing homes for people, providing housing for people. So I applaud the council for doing this. And if they think it's too cumbersome, maybe put a tax on them, and the Affordable Housing Coalition will do it, because we actually hear the real stories of the people that are telling you that you don't need this. We hear the real stories of their tenants, and it's appalling. And you should all be on the street and be talking to people the way that we talk to people during the rent control fight, which wasn't a fair fight, because they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we had a couple $1,000s and a lot of people on the street. And they confused people, and they went after people, and they know how to do it because they've done it before in many, many, many different communities. And, I think we should have the conversation. How did that happen? What happened? Why did it happen? And why are we here right now? And let's make it right. And I think rent control is a piece of keeping people here. I don't think it's the whole piece. We have to have a conversation about a lot more than just rent control. So if you're willing, if you're visionary, if you care about the people who live in Asbury Park, let's have the conversation, but don't be afraid to put something in that protects people here now. Because that right now is your biggest job. Because that right now, we're losing people weekly. And so anyway, so that's what I have to say, but feel good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Daniels, 1026 Monroe Avenue, Asbury Park. I'll make it short too. I know we want to get home and start prepping for Thanksgiving. I, heard that, why would we go from 5-3? We just voted for, back in April. I think the real reason is very simple. It just protects more people, it protects more renters in the town, and the same reason why we should go from 3 to 2. It protects more people in the town that we want to protect. And along those lines, I do not think that we're aiming to just protect one demographic, to protect Black people, to protect just white people. I think this rent control ordinance encompasses it all. I think that it should continue to encompass it all by including those duplexes on the west side. It's not just for Black people. It's for all of us. So let's make it for all of us. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Last chance. Anybody like to be heard? Please get up. Yep.
Hi, I'm Andrea Goodman. I live at 307th. Okay, so I didn't hear what other people said, so I might be repeating, but I think it's good that you have some changes to enhance accountability, like transparency, and especially clarifying the responsibilities of the rent regulation officer, establish like chain of command. I think that's good. I think that you should also add some protections for tenants in this, such as protecting all of the tenants, all of the renters in town, regardless of what property they live in or how many units their landlord might own, whether it's in that building or whether they're renting a place that they just lived in or a new one. It shouldn't matter, because isn't the whole point of this to help the renters, right? And so how come only some of them would get protected? I think you should protect all renters in town. And I understand that that second thing I said is, vacancy decontrol, but it's really just expiring rent control. And it's just reserving it for certain people. And I don't think you should do that. I think everyone should get it. Also, please don't shorten, cut in half the notice requirement for rent increases. 60 days was, short enough. Don't make it 30. If anything, maybe double it, especially if, let's say the landlord just got a hardship increase, given that hardship in the ordinance is defined as you're not making enough profit and you're not, maintaining good credit. So in that case, if even someone who could afford, let's say 3.5% increase, but their landlord wants better credit and the city's like, yeah, it's not government overreach if we step in and help someone have good credit. So we'll do that. And then they have to pay 20% or something. At minimum, maybe give them a year to decide how they can move out. Cut it in half is ridiculous. But, given that seems like the whole ordinance is really just to help landlords out. It doesn't even mention tenants that often. And it also considers doing their job a reason just to get a raise, and then you call it a reward. Rent isn't a reward. It's you're exchanging something. You're giving someone money for a good. And if they don't do their job, they shouldn't get paid just like everyone else, and maybe the rent should go down. The whole point of housing is a roof over your head, and plumbing, and water, right, and heat, and not living in an infested area, right? Otherwise, you might as well be outside. That's what you're paying for. So rent should go down. If those conditions aren't met, there should be consequences, instead of calling rent like a reward just for being there, especially because you're helping them anyway. You think a hardship, I understand that the fair rate of return is like a legal thing, but it's a systemic issue, right? How come there's no legal thing to keep tenants housed? But you can do that here, even if there isn't one in the state, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Help all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing nobody, I'll say, okay, that's it as far as the public conversation. I have to personally say, I thank everybody for being civil, being respectful, no cross conversations. Listen to everybody, made notes. Again, we're here to listen. Like we said, there's no vote being taken tonight. I appreciate everything said. I'll take it and digest it, go from there. That's all I have to say. If any other council person has anything to say before we wrap up.
Nope, I totally agree. Thanks for everyone's input. We need this, and we appreciate you all coming out and spending your night with us.
Yes, thank you all.
Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
All in favor?
Thanksgiving, Council.
Meeting's now adjourned.